Good evening, everyone. I'll call the Monday, July 15th, 2019 Board of Commissioners meeting into order. This evening, we don't have anyone here for the invocation and pledge, so Mr. Beaumont is going to be gracious enough to lead us in a moment of prayer.
We're going to pray first. Heavenly Father, I thank you for this glorious evening. Lord, and I thank you for what a wonderful place that you've created in Currituck County. Lord, I am grateful to be a resident here. And Father, I am grateful for those that are my neighbors, my friends, co-workers. Lord, what a beautiful place we live. Father, I ask that you would grant wisdom to this board as we look to the issues before us. Father, I ask that we would take into consideration all the factors, all of the issues, Lord, and that we would help guide this county with wisdom that only you provide. Father, bless this evening. And Father, I also lift up our two board members who are on travel. And Lord, I ask that you would keep them safe in their return. And Father, bless this evening in Jesus' name.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner Beaumont. Okay. Do we have any changes to the agenda tonight?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make some changes to the amend agenda tonight. I'd like to amend the agenda to remove PB 19-14, the Moyock Farms, from public hearings, item A. The item will be continued to the meeting of August 5th. And I'd like to amend item C under new business to remove the NCAA travel considerations until the next meeting and to add Commissioner Beaumont for the consideration of travel to the Washington, D.C.
Thank you, sir. Is there any other changes this evening? None. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, sir. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you all. Public comment is next. I will make a few comments. We just have one person signed up this evening for public comment. We, the Board of Commissioners, have received some emails about our historic boat building and really Currituck Maritime Museum. Having it be our historic boat building doesn't really do it justice as to what it's going to be. And as we have several people in the audience here tonight that took part in this and supported this effort, and as we've had several people that were opposed to it, we saw their emails as a board. I think it's important that we hear from the people that are here this evening that do support that. And so at this time, I'll bring Gabe Campbell up, who's the first person to sign up for public comment. But after that, I will open the floor to anyone else that would like to come forward and speak about the Maritime Museum and Historic Boat Building. So, Gabe, do we have you? Good evening. How are you, Justin? All right. Good. Well, we will need your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Gabe Campbell. I am in Currituck County. I'm a member of the Currituck County 4-H here. And on Friday, August 23rd through Saturday, 24th, I will be attending the 10th annual North Carolina Association of County Commissioners Youth Summit in Guilford County. And I also look forward to viewing today's session at this time. And I would also like to be able to address any issues that are affecting any youth here in Currituck County. I would greatly appreciate any input that you can give to help me prepare for this event. Thank you.
Are you interested in county government or local government?
Yeah.
You are? All right. Well, maybe one day you can sit up here and take it on the chin once in a while like the rest of us do. Thank you very much for coming up this evening. Appreciate it. All right. Is there anyone who would like to come up this evening and speak to us in favor of the boat building? And I know we've had a lot of input, a lot of work sessions and meetings and all that stuff. Is there anyone here that would like to speak to that?
prepared a 34-minute speech, but I guess I'm going to have to cut it down. All right, my name's Chandler Sawyer. I live at 3668 Currituck Highway here in Maple. I'm an 11th generation native of Currituck County, and my grandfather was Travis Morris, who was an integral part of seeing that this boat program got off the ground. The preservation of maritime history is synonymous with Currituck County and began long before any public interest or funding. Like most historical projects, private interest, private funds, and the work of passionate citizens brings awareness and need for public support. Currituck County has lagged behind other coastal counties in development of historic tourism attractions that reflect its maritime nature. The boat program has been a passion for my family and others. Personal donations and acquisitions of historic artifacts and boats were my grandfather Travis Morris's contribution and sacrifice to ensure that future generations would know the significance of the boats.
Apologies with that, sir. If you could quiet down the audience, please. Thank you. Thank you.
So that future generations would know the significance of the boats and the waters that they navigate here in Currituck. Corolla would not be what it is without some of the historic boats that we choose to exhibit in this museum. Boats brought the mail, supplies, food, and the people who established the village. The first developments, my grandfather hauled all the materials over here by boats and barges, and every aspect of what is enjoyed in the northern Outer Banks was brought over initially by boat. Please consider every aspect of the project's merit, the economic impact it can bring along with the preservation of a former way of life here in Currituck. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anyone else this evening? We have one more.
My name is Rodney Kite. I live at 4097 Currituck Highway in Barco. First of all, I'd like to thank this board and all the past boards for their support for this project. And I just want to say a brief reminder that when the consideration was given years ago about what they were going to do with the Wellhead Club, there was a lot of people against it. And look at what it's turned into. When each of you ran, you knew there were going to be days like today. But you jumped in the ring, and I appreciate you doing that. And I ask you to stand strong. This is something that will be good for this county, it's good for the history of this county, and even though the majority might not be here, they're behind you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right. Anyone else for public comment this evening? All right. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. My name is Jerry Wright. I live at Jarvisburg, and I'm a former member of this board, former chairman of the Wellhead Preservation Trust, and current member of the Boat Museum Committee. I think the thing that I think about more than anything else is there's a lot of people here in this room tonight, and I know a lot of people that are no longer with us who put time, many hundreds of hours, and put together this boat museum, and there are artifacts that will go into it. When we think about the Wellhead Club and sitting in a room right over here one day negotiating with Mr. McCree and others for a building and a piece of property at Corolla, and what the potential for it was and how we got it done. And the many hours that I listened to people talk about the positives and negatives they thought about what we were going to do at the Wellhead Club. Since then, we've basically restored the Wellhead Club. One of the main opposition persons got up the day we dedicated and introduced the people that were there for the ceremony, and he says, you know, I was always against the Wellhead Club. He says, but I've got to say today that the people that supported this project and got it to where it was after these many, many years deserve to know that it was the right decision for Currituck County, and it's something we should have done. Since then, we've convinced the Wildlife Commission to open up the Environmental Education Center. We've put a bath and access area on the other side of the street so that people could come from the county either by car or boat and enjoy the surf over there. And we still have some things to do. We'd like to add the boat museum as a historic thing. to what we've done, and sometime we hope that we will get that channel restored so that we can use a boat basin that's one of the most great resources that we have at Corolla. And so on behalf of the people, Travis, my dad, many other guides, I think the one thing you'll look at it when you look at this picture over here with all the hunt clubs and the access for use of boat. I lived in and was born in Lower Currituck. And Lower Currituck, Mr. Snowden just helped with our 350th anniversary of Currituck Precinct. And one thing you'll look on this map is that back 250 years ago, before we had roads and trains into Currituck County, if you went anywhere, you went by boat. I can remember my grandmother talking about getting on a van skyver and going to Elizabeth City and getting on a train to go see her people. And if you went anywhere, you got in a boat. I remember my dad talking about he and Fred Newbern loaded 25,000 watermelons on oyster boats from Chesapeake Bay in the Quanjock Canal. They didn't go by truck. They put them on an oyster boat, and they took them to Baltimore, Philadelphia, Boston, and New York. And all of it was by water. We have a great history in our wartime occurrences. And many of the clubs, including Knott's Island, the vast majority of the clubs were on the Outer Banks and Knott's Island. And so we look forward to displaying some of those artifacts in our museum in the future and adding to what we think is a wonderful thing for our county at Corolla. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else this evening? Oh, see a regular face. Good evening, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, when this boat program started around 2005, I was on the sidelines mainly making sandwiches for the people who were drawing the boats and looking at the boats. But I'd like to talk to you about 3 points about why this boat program and the museum is a good thing. Well, as you all know, I'm going to preserve history in any way that I can. That's the first thing. But the second thing that you need to realize that this program, the Currituck Boat Program, is unique. And there may be a couple facts that you may not be aware of that me being on the sidelines, I know. One of them is in 2008 in San Diego, all the way out there in California, at the International Maritime Conference, where countries from all over the world attended. The Currituck program was adopted as the standard for how you record boats and get them into the Library of Congress. That same year, the men who had been collecting those boats and as representatives of the Currituck Boat Program went to New York, where they won the Award of Merit from the local and the Association of State and Local History, a national award saying that these boats that had been collected are worth being preserved. That's the main point, the value that we've done. The second thing I want to comment on, as Jerry has said, because I got to bring the sandwiches and the soups in January and February where these students were drawing these boats and doing the grunt work, I found out some things. The boats that were collected, where were they from? Well, I had to make a trip all the way over to Corova. I had to go to Corolla. I had to go to Pine Island. I had to go to Swan Island. I didn't get to go. They just took the sandwiches and went off and had a good time. I had to go to the end of the county and lots of places on the mainland. So the boats that are going to be represented in this museum don't represent the mainland, but represent every part of Currituck County. And the final thing I'd like to say, my third point, is this has been an idea that has been talked about, discussed in this county for a number of years. And I want us to take a step forward, not a step backwards. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Newton. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Penny Leary Smith, Camden, North Carolina. But I'm blessed to have been raised in Currituck County, and from a family who lived off of the water and the land. My ancestry goes back hundreds of years, from farmers, from hunting and fishing guides, to decoy makers and wooden boat builders, lighthouse keepers, you name it, we were there. If my father was living, he would be 106, and he sat in this area, in this room many times. He was clerk of court for Currituck County, clerk of Superior Court, Ralph Saunders. Very proud. So just stop and think how far his parents, his grandparents, and our ancestry goes. It is important to know of our history and how we got where we are today. My parents were strong supporters of saving the Whalehead Club. My mother was one of those volunteers with a lot of other ladies when there was nothing. Rode over to Corolla, sat at the front door of a dilapidated, rotten building, telling the story and the history of the Whalehead in Currituck County when the floors were rotten and dilapidated, but they carried their sandwich and they were there to let others know. I had the privilege to serve on the Whalehead Trust during the entire renovation. I went back on the trust, and I was there, and I was very instrumental in the county taking it over. Plus, my career in tourism as director of the Dismal Swamp Welcome Center, I had the great opportunity to visit the facility, learn its history as it progressed, plus being able to tell others as they traveled what they would see if they went to Corolla to the Whalehead Club. So I was able to direct, educate, and encourage tourists to come to Currituck Outer Banks, Currituck Mainland. So it is only fitting and knowledgeable for us to continue saving our history with the building of the Historical Boat Museum, to continue our responsibility as citizens to save this history so that others can learn more of what we are and who we are. Whether you are a native or you have come here to live with us, learn who we are, how we got where we are, and we're proud in working towards this and continuing sharing our history. I can close and strongly say, if it was not for the revenue of the county occupancy tax Currituck receives from its tourists, you would not have a lot of amenities you have today, whether it's the mainland or the northern Outer Banks. What would your county taxes be? You would be a county struggling and in very bad financial situations or a position. We're proud, and I join in continuing working for this, as I've worked in the past both locally, state, and federal, to see that we are protected and to see that tourism is a large industry that we have so much to be proud of with our history. Working together is our future for tomorrow. So I want to say to each one of you commissioners, some of you are new to me and some of them I've known for years, but thank you for your hard work and we appreciate your support.
Thank you. Anyone else this evening? Good evening.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Mike Doxey. Live at 501 Narrow Shore Road in Idley. I'm currently a member on the Historic Boat Committee, and I was one of the original members on the Whalehead Preservation Trust. And Penny just alluded to the fact that our history, if we don't preserve it, then nobody else is going to, and it'll be gone. Back in the early 80s, there was a group of people got together called the Currituck Wildlife Guild, and their vision was mainly for the duck hunting heritage here in Currituck. But over the years, we looked at other stuff as far as historical values, and the boats were one of them. Wilson Snowden and Travis Morris were the two major ones that really started collecting some of the old boats and really started preserving some of our historic boats. And then Barbara got them hooked up with East Carolina, and all the boats were measured, drawn, and I believe listed with the historic register, or at least on at the in the I don't know exactly what it's called, Library of Congress, maybe. Right. So it's very important to us, as well as a lot of course, I wouldn't say old timers, because most of the old timers are not with us anymore. But as we get older, we definitely like to preserve our history and let Currituck be known for what it's always been known for, and that's a sportsman's paradise. And with the boat museum, we think it's a fine place to put it here in Currituck, and we appreciate y'all's diligence in the past and looking to work with y'all in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right. Do we have anyone else to speak this evening in public comment? All right. Seeing none, I will close public comment. Thank you all for your comments. Next up is commissioner comments, and I'll take the lead on that. And it's funny, we talk about the Wellhead Club. My father actually tried to buy that, and he had someone that outbid him. And not many people probably know that. Thank God the county took over that. Now that I've seen what happened, he just wanted to turn it into a historic inn, and I think we did much better with the inn at Crawl Light than the Wellhead Club. So I'm glad the county has that, and so I have a little bit of tie to that property in an abstract way. One of the things we're working on for tourism, while I have a captive audience, I brought to the attention of the county, and I sit on the Tourism Advisory Board, was to work on some of our events and do an event assistance program. And we at the Tourism Advisory Board have been working through that, and that's coming to fruition. So we're going to be rolling out some new information on that very shortly. But we as a county, through the Tourism Department, recognize that the mainland needs to grow. Knott's Island's Peach Festival needs to grow. So we have a lot of people here that put in a lot of effort to do different things to the county to bring us together, not only as a county, but to bring people in from outside our county. And so I just thought it was important to help these things get off the ground and do that. And working with Tamara and her staff, the Tourism Advisory Board, we've been able to do that. So we'll have that together, I guess, very shortly here, right, Ms. Tamara? Yep. Okay. So anyway, just keep an eye out for that, especially for those of you that do some big events here. We've got some pretty good money to help offset some of the costs of the expenses of promoting those events and getting them up and running. So they don't necessarily have to go toward promotion, which is a different program we have to just deal with promotions. I'll make a brief comment on the Boat Museum. It is an agenda item tonight, and the reason I asked you guys to come up at public comment is it's not part of that particular agenda item. But it is, I appreciate everyone coming out here tonight in support of it. I am not from Currituck County. I've only been here for the last 22 years. It is my home now. It has become my home. I've met great people here, and the history here is phenomenal. I do wild horse tours, so I am part of the historic tourist industry here. Obviously, they've been around for a little while, and this is just a great thing. Our history does need to be preserved. It needs to be told. There are stories that go back to land grants from the King of England. It's amazing that we still have families here and still have land that are owned by those families that go back that far. The maritime history on the Outer Banks itself will be told there, and it is an important thing. Just going back to World War I and World War II, the U-boats out there, ships burning, coal still washing up on the beach for some of those shipwrecks. So there is a diverse history that needs to be told, and Corolla is a great place to do it. We reach a much larger captive audience, and that audience needs to understand our history. We know it here. We need to tell that to everyone else. So with that, I'll turn it over to Commissioner Payment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to touch base on the boat museum. You know, I grew up here in Currituck, and I owned a juniper skip growing up as a kid, and I believe it was, if memory serves me right, it was made by the O'Neill family. And the quality and the workmanship in that boat, I just remember packing those seams, you know, getting ready for the season every year, checking it out. But that thing was so durable as a kid. It took me all over the Sound. It held up through my treacherous events through the Sound. It took me many times across the Sound duck hunting over there by Crawl Lighthouse every morning. Sometimes, you know, ice wasn't a good thing for juniper skips. You didn't want to really. I found it the hard way, but it still stood up to that. But to be able to share and have something for individuals to come and see the quality and workmanship of the detail that was put into our local builders, these boat builders here, and how well they stood up the test of time and the durability is just, I mean, you know, unfortunately I sold it years ago. I wish I'd had it because it was still floating, but to be able for people to see something like that of our heritage and the quality and the durability of something like that in a museum is just, I'm excited for it. It's long overdue, and I can't wait to see it's done. And that's all I had to say.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Beaumont, anything from you this evening?
Not this, well, real quick. Everybody's pretty aware that it's been really hot outside. And I want to, especially if you're in the HVAC building, which I'm not. But as hot as it is for us, you know, the military has a comment that's hydrate or die. People need to keep an eye on their pets as well. I think folks lose sight of the fact that, you know, pets can't tell you they're thirsty, especially dogs. I know mine have been hot. So take care of yourselves, take care of your pets.
Thank you, sir. Mr. McCord.
I want to touch on the boat museum as well. When I was previously a commissioner before, we got some severe blowback for the animal shelter building. I had an animal shelter meeting on Tuesday night. They do awesome things. The reports that I received just amazed me how much that they actually do, even more than I knew about, and I go to the meetings quarterly. We received blowback for the ball fields. The ball fields are packed. They're beautiful. I love when people tell me, I got a buddy of mine that owns 6 golf courses in Virginia. He comes down here for the weekends for his one son plays travel ball. He said he loves playing on our fields. They're top notch. Stuff for us to be proud of. The College of the Albemarle building that came in, and that's just continuing to grow. So I'm looking forward for the boat museum for the history of Currituck. I took Miss Snowden's first Currituck history class in high school, my junior year. To this day, I always tell her that I was her favorite student, but she never agrees with me on that. But that being said, I mean, you know, this is like honest, like yeah, probably.
I wonder why.
Yeah, but like Chairman White said too, I mean, it's part of our history. I mean, this summer I've worked beach duty for the Sheriff's Department, and I've talked to so many people that come down here. They've told me stuff about this, and they love Currituck County, you know. And I mean, they different restaurants on the mainland and all this stuff. And like I said, this museum, I'm looking forward to it because it's going to just it's another part of our history, and that people are going to get the privilege to share and see it grow. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Etheridge?
I will touch on what you talked about, the events. I attended the fireworks celebration at Eagle Creek Golf Club on the 6th of July, and I would estimate, well over 1,000 people. And I'd like to commend our EMS, the Mayotte Volunteer Fire Department, and the Sheriff's Department for assisting with that event because it made it come out pretty good. And everybody's looking forward to it continuing next year. So that's something that event issue will be addressing. In regards to the boat museum, the museum about Currituck history, I think it's very important because you can't escape the responsibility of tomorrow without knowing and understanding our past. And that's what that museum will do for us. And it'll do it for our visitors. So I was here when they started talking about it back in 2005, I think Mike said. And he is an old timer. Don't let him pull your leg. So I commend them for their efforts and continued support of it, and we'll get it done. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. And one last thing I did fail to mention, we're light two commissioners tonight. Ms. Kitty Etheridge and Ms. Lena Jarvis are out at the National Association of County Commissioners. Ms. Etheridge is our voting delegate to the National Association of County Commissioners, so they're learning some stuff out there. So just want to pass that along. Next item on the agenda is County Manager's Report. Mr. Steichleiter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First off, I wanted to address an issue that we've had come up about odor control at the new sewer plant at Ocean Sands, just so that folks out there understand what's going on. When we decommissioned the old plant, there no longer is flow going into there. The sewage that was left in there has to be pumped at a certain rate into the new plant so that it can treat. If you put too much of it in at one time, it messes up the chemistry of the new plant. As you move it, there is an effect in engineering called gassing off, which releases the smell that you have around the sewer plant. So the county engineer estimates that the movement of the old sewage to the new plant will take another 2 weeks. After that point, the smell should be better. We have also budgeted a substantial amount of money for odor control on that plant out of the contingency line item, so we will be putting odor control in the new plant to try to help keep that down as well. So I wanted to address that issue. The other issue that I wanted to bring up was this coming weekend, we have a really neat event that's going to take place at our athletic complex. We've got a statewide softball tournament that's coming in town. It's estimated that roughly 1,200 people will be in attendance at that event when you consider all the players and family that come along with it. So in an evening when we're kind of talking about tourism and what that means as far as teaching the Currituck County history, I did want to just point out that we are also making some strides when it comes to athletic tourism in our county. Sports tourism is an industry that's really growing, and it's good to see an event of that magnitude come to our top-notch facilities that we've got here in Currituck County.
Thank you.
Points out a need for a mainland hotel.
Mm-hmm. That it does. Well, hopefully that'll help Mr. Larry in his efforts to recruit someone to show him some good numbers. All right. Next item on the agenda this evening is administrative reports. Item A, Lower Currituck Volunteer Fire Department's here to tell us all about themselves.
Thank you for giving us a chance to come before the board tonight and tell you a few things that are going on. My name's Mills Riddick. I am the new president of the board of directors for the Lower Currituck Volunteer Fire Department. In June of 2019, the board took on a new look. Every member is new except for one original member. BJ Baum is my vice president, and she is also a volunteer, but she's also an employee for Currituck Fire EMS. Michelle Thomas is our new secretary. For her and her family, it's a family gig. I mean, Timmy's volunteered. He's been like a big brother to me for years. Their oldest son, Justin, is also a volunteer firefighter with us, and, of course, Michelle. Our new sergeant of arms is Eugene McLaughlin, retired police officer with the Kitty Hawk Police Department. Everybody knows Eugene. He's been around for a long time, and he's a good person. This Thursday night, we'll be filling our treasury position. We have nominations, and the body will be voting on the new treasurer, and after Thursday night, we'll have a full board once again. To give you an idea as far as what the fire department's been up to, in 2018, we ran more calls than any other department, and it's been like that for a while. We ran 702 active calls for the year of 2018. And to give you an idea, Kitty Hawk ran 1,300 in 2018. 2019, we ran 249 calls through the end of June. We ran 52 fire calls, 94 motor vehicle accidents, 52 EMS calls, 21 alarm activations. We ran 17 public service calls, LZ calls. We've had 11, which is when Nightingale or either Dare Med Flight have to land to pick up a patient. We've had one water rescue and one hazardous spill issue. And like I say, that's it averages out to be more than one call a day this year. We are proud of what we do. We are proud to support the members of the board. We're looking forward to working with each and every one of you. We do have some things we'd like to accomplish this year, and we're looking forward to working with the FIAB board also. The one plus that we have is we have a great fire chief in Brooks Hart. Brooks has tons of knowledge. He has actually tons of certifications, and he is also a Currituck Fire EMS employee. Our deputy chief is a full-time Nags Head firefighter by the name of Hayden Poland. Thanks to Hayden, that's how I got into the fire service. If it hadn't been for him, I wouldn't be standing here tonight. And that was about 10 years ago. Again, I just want to stress the fact we are looking forward to working with the Currituck County Board of Commissioners and the FIAB board. And like I say, we'll do what we can to help make it easy on you, but we will have requests at times that I'm sure might get under your skin a little bit, but that's just the way it is. One of them being a new truck. But like I say, guys, thank you for giving me the time to speak tonight. Again, we are looking forward to working with you, and we thank you for everything that you do.
Mr. Rick, just real quick, you went through the fire, not the academy, it was the essential, you got your two, what?
I had
how
my
far did you
state
go
firefighter 1 and 2.
Okay, that's what I thought you did. So you went through the whole program.
I went through the Dare County Fire Academy. I did it all in 9 months. I went to school 3 to 4 nights a week for 9 months, every Saturday for a minimum of 8 hours, and sometimes on Sundays.
Wow. Well, thank you for the volunteer service and going through that, and appreciate everything you do for us.
Thank you.
I'd like to say the same thing. Thank you for all you guys. They do a great job on the south end. I swear the wrecks on Saturday, they're always in Grandy. And you said 94. I think I've probably been to about 54 of those.
Yeah.
But they do a phenomenal job. They have a great staff. Thank you for what y'all do.
Well, we've had some rough wrecks this year. We've had a multiple fatality already, and we just keep running. It's what we do. We love to do it, and we love helping the citizens in our community. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for all your efforts. We appreciate it. All right, next item is public hearing. Item B, which is now item A, public hearing and possible adoption of a resolution authorizing the filling of an application with the local government commission for approval of a financing agreement for Currituck County Public Safety Building. That is a lot to say. And we'll just hang loose for a minute while a couple people get out of here. All right. Who's handling this one? You look like you're ready to go, Mr. Steichleather.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. This item is a public hearing to allow us to make application to the local government commission to go out to secure debt for our public safety building. In order to do that, there are several criteria that we have to do, this being one of them. We actually have to hold a public hearing to hear if there's any comments from our citizenry before we move forward. The process, we're expecting a final maximum price in the next 2 weeks, I'd say, which is also called a guaranteed maximum price from the contractor, which is Sussex Construction. This facility will house, on the bottom floor, our public safety staff. It'll be communications, emergency management, sheriff's office, fire, EMS. It'll actually have space available for forestry, highway patrol, and SBI. Then on the top floor, you'll have the EOC, as well as classroom space for the College of the Albemarle, where we expect them to bring in CNA classes, BLET classes, firefighting classes, and can hopefully turn this into really a regional public safety center, so that there are also maybe potentially FEMA trainings that will end up being offered at this facility, as well as other state trainings that folks could go to. I'd be happy to answer any questions that the board may have about this particular stage in the process.
Any questions for the manager? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Steichletter. I didn't have anyone signed up for public comment. Is there anyone here? I will open public comment. Is there anyone here who would like to speak to this item this evening? All right. Seeing none, I will close the public comment. And any discussion? We have Motion for approval. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, item carries unanimously. Moving on, old business. A, PB 19-2, Currituck County Height. Request an amendment to the Unified Development Ordinance, Chapter 3, to increase the maximum building height from 35 to 65 feet in a heavy industrial HI zoning district. We've talked about this before. Ms. Liz Cicero, you got some new or exciting information for us, or just
A little.
a little? Okay, great.
Some new information. We did consider and held a public hearing at the July meeting about this text amendment that is going to increase the maximum building height in our heavy industrial zoning from 35 foot to 65 feet. You asked for specific language to come back before you, and it is in the staff report where it's footnote 7 that we would add an additional 1 foot of setback for every 1 foot that the structure exceeds 35 feet. And that would be, here's an example of this, so that we have some scaling and community compatibility standards, so that we would have that additional setback. If the taller the building is, the more the building's going to be set back. Mr. Etheridge also was concerned about how this could potentially impact the Maple Commerce Park. I worked with our GIS analyst who made a map that's included in your packet. And you see that there's still significant buildable area, even with the expanded setbacks in our Maple Commerce Park. But the smallest lot, which is lot number 4, is 3.8 acres. And with the increased setbacks, it's reduced the buildable area to 2.2 acres. However, there are other parcels in that property, in that Maple Commerce Park, that are less, that still have significant building area in there. Staff does recommend approval of this text amendment. I'll be glad to answer any questions that you may have about this additional language and then additional information about the Maple Commerce Park.
Questions from the board? Commissioner Beaumont, this was, I guess this meets what you were looking for?
Yes, that is correct.
And we addressed the, I had a concern about the language on the setbacks versus using an example for it, and we took care of that, I believe, in there as well. Okay.
Yes, in the dimensional standards in the chart.
Yes, okay, yep.
You see that footnote 7
Yep.
is over
Okay.
all the setbacks.
Okay. Okay.
All right. Any other discussion from the board? Any questions from Ms. Cicero? Open the floor for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve PB 19-12 as proposed, well, with the additional language, and that in addition to the required minimum structures shall be required to maintain an additional 1 foot setback for every 1 foot the structure exceeds 35 feet. For example, a 50-foot structure shall be required to be 35 feet from the front property line, or 65 feet if located on a major arterial, 30 feet from the side property line, and 40 feet from the rear property line. The text amendment request is consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the 2006 land use plan, because an increased setback for structures exceeding 35 feet addresses the scale of the structure in relation to the property line, and maintaining the UDO community compatibility standards and adequate fire protection support proper distribution of development forms in accordance with the suitability of land, infrastructure, availability, and the compatibility of surrounding land use plans per LUP goal number 10. And the request is reasonable and in the public interest because it maintains the purpose and intent of the HI zoning district and improves building design flexibility for new industry located in the county, and an increased setback along with the community compatibility standards ensure efficient development within the county and improve compatibility among land uses.
Thank you, sir. Do you have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Are any opposed? Hearing none, carries unanimously. Moving on to new business, item A, the historic boat building, and it's a recommendation of a bid award. Mr. Steichleather, are you up on this one?
Actually, our assistant county engineer, Michelle
nice.
Perry, is gonna take the lead on this one. I figured y'all get tired of hearing from me.
Yes. Yeah, pretty much. Good evening.
Good evening.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Right.
I know it seems like the Boat Museum has already been introduced tonight. However, about a year and a half ago, we had a work session with the commissioners where our tourism department put together a video that really, I think, explained the purpose for the Boat Museum portion of this project. And we have that to play tonight, if Lori will.
My name is Rodney Kite. I am from Barco, North Carolina in Currituck County. I am the chairman of the Historic Boat Committee. My love of the boats here in Currituck County comes probably from my father. We started out hunting in a small skiff with a float rig, and my brother and my dad and myself spent many days on the water, whether we were shooting ducks or just talking about things in the world. And I'd like to pass that on, and I did pass it on to my own son, and I'd like to pass it on to my grandchildren someday. So the boats are important to me for that reason. Our whole history revolves around boats and the water. I've had travelers from Arizona come here and they couldn't believe everywhere they looked there was water. Well, the water has influenced who we are as a people, and it has definitely impacted how Currituck County has evolved. It was the first industry we had in this county probably was boat building and the duck hunting. You had to have the boats to hunt the ducks. And if you think about it, our first tourists to Currituck County came here because of the boats, the resources, the water. They were wealthy sportsmen coming from up north. They come down here to enjoy the resources Currituck offered, which were hunting and fishing, and it provided an income for many of our families that were here. This is something that we need to cherish.
Well, the boats that we have right now that are in the museum that's already been restored were integral parts of the industry that we had, where it was long net fishing or hunting or even taking sport fishing parties. They were the means to get the people out there.
My family made their livelihood from the Currituck sign as boat builders, decoy makers, and guides for both fishing and hunting. When I look at the boats that's been restored, one of them was built by my Uncle Blanton for the Wildlife Commission. And it makes me feel good to think a part of my uncle is still with us and we cared enough to restore and save his boat.
Way before there were vehicles and roads, there was always boat. That's how people got around. It's very important for a future generation to see boats that were built 100 years ago. And I think the oldest one we have was built like in 1916, and it's been fully restored. If we don't preserve these boats for historical sake, then they'll eventually waste away. Since they will hopefully be in a museum type setting, then the story will be told about the importance of each boat and why each boat was shaped the way it was. If we didn't preserve our history, then Currituck County would be just like any other place you go.
I think this phrase says what this boat committee is all about and what it wants to do. It has been said that at its best, preservation engages the past in a conversation with the present over a mutual concern for the future.
My name is Jerry Wright. I was born and raised here in Currituck County. The boats are a symbol of days gone by, whether it be this boat that was built in 1943 that has many, many stories that it could tell. The Mildew is a boat that we are working to help preserve in our county. It was built in 1943. Mr. Pat O'Neill, one of our famous boat builders, and his brother, who did much of the boat work, built the boat for his own personal use. And my dad and Thurman Chatham, who owned Dews Island in the 40s, were fortunate enough that he talked Mr. O'Neill out of ownership of the boat. And Dews Island has used the boat in its operation from 1945 till now. Well, the mildew has a specific tunnel design in it that allows it to go in very shallow water. This boat I've seen go in 12 inches of water and sandy bottom and keep right on going. Those of us that love these boats and are left to speak are speaking for hundreds of people that are no longer here, that have been part of the history of these boats and utilized and used them in their livelihood across the waters of this county. And it's important that we try and share that with our future kids and also for the people that come and visit us. Tourism is a huge thing in our communities and on our coast, and is one of the strongest industries we have in North Carolina. And remembering those things, whether it's the ponies at Corolla or the Wellhead Club, and the boats are one of the parts of that puzzle that we need to save.
My name is Wilson Walker Snowden. I'm a resident of Currituck County, and I've lived here all my life. My interest has been always Currituck County, and especially the water. That was my hobby. And I'm not a waterman. I don't consider myself a waterman, makes his living on the water. I don't, but I enjoy just being on the water. And so that's my interest in it. And my interest was there in the boats because I've had one ever since I was 10 years old. Well, the preservation of these boats has been going on for 30 years, which seems like a long time, but time passes fast. Well, the boats were unique to us. When you look at those and you see the workmanship in them and all, you have to appreciate that. There was a lot of thought, and these boat builders tried to build something that was usable, workable. And you have to remember, even during the hunting days here, the decoys and everything that they had was like a tool to them. They made them. They didn't have, there was no factory stuff back then. Well, we realized they were going to be scarce, and there wasn't anybody coming along to take up the art of building. We decided trying to save them because history is important to us. The wooden boat was hard to get out of your mind because it came in with fiberglass in the middle 50s. And they were nice, but the wooden boat worked better than the fiberglass. Of course, the fiberglass took the maintenance away, and when they did that, everybody loved that and wanted the easy path. But it was fun to work on these boats and repair them. It was fun to hang around the boat builders, Pat O'Neill, Wilden Walker, and see what they did. And watching things like that made us appreciate more what was built here. And you know, because you got to realize every individual that built a boat built it for what he was going to use it for. They could build a boat and it looked like a piece of furniture. I have a real appreciation for what these boat builders did. It's a craft that we're losing. It's a part of history, and people need to understand that and know that it's a way of life that was here.
My name is Chandler Sawyer. I am born and raised here in Currituck. My grandfather was Travis Morse, who was also born and raised here in Currituck. His family's been here forever. He basically fell in love with boats when he was a young boy and has been an instrumental part of the Currituck Historic Boat Program. Was one of him and Wilson Snowden were the two that basically got it started, I think in the late 90s. As a young boy, he got fascinated with boats. Like some people like horses, some people like trucks. He liked trucks and boats. And being a lifelong native of Currituck County and seeing how instrumental those boats were in working on the Sound, that's just what he fell in love with.
So that's why he really felt it was important to preserve the boats here. You know, Granddad just had a knack for retaining information and dates, historical things. So with these boats, he was able to look at a boat and say, you know, that was built by Pat O'Neill, and this one was built by Wilton Walker. And one of the things that was important to him, or that he really enjoyed, was the fact that each of these little boats were made for different things in the Sound. You had your larger boats, like your gas boats. Those were kind of the 4x4s, the trucks of the Sound. And then you had your little skiffs, which were, you know, like your little push mower that you could get around in the shallow waters. These boats were made especially and specifically for our Sound in different areas and for different purposes. You know, some were for carrying people, some were for carrying decoys, some were for fishing. But he just always had a really good ability at, you know, looking at those and just being able to tell you who made it, what it was made for, when it was made, almost down to the day sometimes. At a young age, my grandfather started taking me duck hunting when I was probably about 5 years old. That started building a passion in me of, you know, for duck hunting, and obviously for the boats. We used old wooden skiffs even when I was a kid. The first boat I ever received was from my granddad, and it was an old wooden skiff, which I still have today. There's not a whole lot of those old boats still around that are still in use even in our Sound, because, you know, everybody uses fiberglass and aluminum and stuff like that. I got, you know, an opportunity to experience the old ways and the old boats, you know, and hopefully we'll be able to pass down the importance of those old boats, even though a lot of them don't exist anymore, to, you know, my kids.
That is a very good video.
Thank you to our tourism department for devoting the time to pull that together so quickly about a year and a half ago for a work session. But I think it really tells the story. And as I referenced a second ago, the Boat Museum is a portion of the project. I looked into the square footage, and about a little over a quarter of the building is actually some other pieces, such as we're replacing restrooms that are right next to the lighthouse and that serve the lighthouse. We're replacing those. Those are in major need of repair or replacement at this time. So that's a portion of this project. We also have a storage area for the historic Crawler Park, and a third piece is a multi-purpose space. It could be used for educational space or even meeting space, but there's a room for that as well. So those are pieces that are in addition to the Boat Museum itself. What I'm here tonight to talk to you about is our bid. We bid out the project on March 31st, and our original bid date was April 25th. We extended the bid date to May 9th to try to encourage more bidders to put in their bids on the project. On May 9th, we held a bid opening, and we only had 2 bidders, so we had to rebid the project. So we had a third bid date of May 22nd. That was a total of just shy of 8 weeks of a bid period. We did get the same 2 bidders again, and Sussex Development Corporation was our low bidder, lowest responsive bidder on the project. Their number was $3,213,029.49. Tonight, we are recommending award of the project to Sussex Development for that bid amount, and also to authorize the county manager to execute contracts.
Any questions?
I do have a question. What else have they built in the county? They built a couple other buildings before, haven't they?
That's correct. Sussex Development first built for us the YMCA facility, and after that they built our COA facility, and they are also currently our design builder for the Public Safety Center.
And is it safe to say the original project was not where we're at now, right? As we move through working on this project, we realized the needs of the park could change, some of the community input we see, like having meeting spaces, things of those nature. So, you know, one of the letters or emails we've gotten is about the cost of the building, but as we realized what we needed to use it for, the bathrooms needed to be tore down and restored, or new bathrooms put up, which will be arguably much better than the existing bathrooms that are there. A lot of that is what has driven the cost up compared to what it originally was. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes, and we took a lot of care in the design. In addition to those things, there's a breezeway that kind of connects the restrooms and the boat museum together, but it was aligned to kind of line up on an axis with the lighthouse and the Whalehead Club. It's almost kind of a gateway to the park through there. So there was a lot of care taken through this design process to the park itself and the needs we have there.
Mr. Chairman, one other issue on cost that I think is worth mentioning is that when this project got started, and forgive me, I don't have the history, Michelle, when did we kind of start talking about costs for this project?
I think as early as I found a very, very preliminary number put together in May of 2016. That was before we had even put schematic designs together.
So something that I want to mention, from 2016 to now, the contractor who got the bid will tell you in his 40 years of construction, commercial construction, it's the busiest he's ever seen it, which causes an increase in the cost of labor and an increase in the cost of materials. And so that, part of the reason is that some of the numbers previously were based on 2016. We've come a long way since then, coming out of the recession. And so, the cost of materials, and as you all are aware, it's expensive to construct anything in Corolla because of the cost of transport for materials to get up there. So that's also part of the reason.
Take a boat across. Right. If we get in the Whalehead Club.
I do want to note, in addition to that, the bids were less than $37,000 apart.
Wow.
So, in my history of bidding projects, that's tight. This is the number. So, I don't think it wasn't what we were expecting, but it is certainly, I think it was bid and the numbers were tight, and I trust that it is the number today as we sit in our market.
And the other piece, you'll hear the number, the folks who emailed all of us talked a lot about a number of $4.3 million, and you heard that the number of the bid is $3.2 million, basically. There's design work that's paid for, but the other piece is we have budgeted a considerable amount of money to be able to put first-class exhibits into this facility. It would be a shame to build a nice facility, put boats in it, and not tell any other story.
That's part of the picture that's missing. The original number was really just building the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then
That's correct.
the Board of Commissioners, some of whom are gone now, but they were here and decided to make it a first-class facility, not go in both feet first, jump right in and make it a great thing instead of piecemealing this together, which was another cost driver on this project, to get it right from the start.
Well, look, having talked to the board and talking to staff, the last thing we wanted to do was construct a building that's basically just a conditioned space for just boat storage. That's not what we're looking to do here. We're looking to tell the story of the water and how Currituck County has used it as its lifeblood. You heard, the duck guiding and the fishing, but there's also the agricultural component that used barges to move product, and up to Norfolk. You heard the story about the watermelons headed up the Sound. It was also used for the timber industry in this county. That's why Shingle Landing is called Shingle Landing. They transported shingles out the waterway to take it to market. So, it's important to tell the whole story of the water and the impact. To do that, we had to put the kind of money into the exhibits that we've budgeted for this project.
Thank you. Anything further from Michelle? Thank you. I will make a few more comments. One of the emails we got mentioned the parking going away, and so in talking to county staff, we're losing 10 spots. In the grand scheme of things, it isn't much. And talking with Ms. Tamron today, it's rare that we fill the whole parking up there, except for huge events like the 4th of July. Other than that, we generally can handle the parking at the facility for most of our events, and that includes, what do you guys get on Whalehead Wednesday? I was about to say Wine and Beer Wednesday, but Whalehead Wednesday is 300, 400, 500 people there on average. Yeah.
We also have a shuttle, so we actually pick them up from the parking lot in front and bring them in if they want.
Right. So since several people mentioned that, parking is not an overriding concern for us. We're losing 10 spaces. Some of the parking would be improved around the new building once it's done. One of the emails made mention that we lose parking because of the air stations. Those are eventually going to be moved down when we develop the rest of our property. The 10 acres just outside of Crawl Light there, we're putting the new ABC store. I think the intent is to move those somewhere else and not have them at the park forever. But for now, it's a good, easy location. Lack of community meetings was another concern, or that we didn't publicize this or have enough input or comment. And we had quite a few work sessions, as I recall, on this. Multiple meetings over decades, apparently, and more concentrated now. The video that we saw this evening was put out for public consumption by your department handled that, right? Tourism Advisory handled that. We had several meetings here, budget meetings, our annual retreat. This was discussed as an agenda item at that. So to say that it hasn't been brought to the public's attention, or that their input was not sought, is a little bit disingenuous. That we do everything in the light. With the sunshine clause, if there's more than 4 commissioners, we have to advertise the meeting. Everything we do is in the public spotlight as commissioners. And I've been, for the last 2.5 years as commissioner, encouraging and telling people what we do, what we have work sessions on, and asking them to come to these various things, to be involved in their county and understand what's going on, so that they're not blindsided, and they can carry forth that information into the community and spread that information out. So I just wanted to address a few of those things that came in a couple emails, and that this is a great project. When we did surveys with our visitors here. One of the top things that people felt set us apart from other areas of the Outer Banks is our history, and that's a big deal for me personally. I'm travel during the winter with my family. Everywhere I go, we seek out museums and different things to do to teach our child something new and to experience the history of an area we go into. So having this in Corolla is absolutely the best place to do that, because it's going to reach the maximum number of people that come to visit our county. And we're preserving the history for the people that live here and are born here and move here. But more importantly, we're teaching that history to other people that come here to visit our little corner of North Carolina, which happens to be the best corner of North Carolina. Another interesting thing, 73% of the people we interviewed visited the lighthouse, which is right next door. 52% of the people we interviewed visited the Whalehead Club. I'll skip over how many did a wild horse tour, so I don't plug myself. 24% of the people here came here, visited the Outer Banks Center for Wildlife Education, and 13% of those visited the Currituck Banks National Estuary Reserve, which is the walking trail in Corolla. So clearly, history plays a huge part in people's vacations. The top 2 things were dining and shopping, and the third one was going to the lighthouse, which is a pretty big historical marker here in Currituck County. So I think it's important people understand just how important it is to the visitors that are here that they have those types of attractions here and available to them in our county.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to go ahead and make a motion to approve.
No, I have one question for
Yes, sir.
Michelle. Also, a comment in some of the emails was the bid process might not have been broad enough. How did you advertise requests for proposals?
So this was a formal bid, so we had to publicly advertise. It was advertised in the Daily Advance on March 31st. We also advertised on the North Carolina Hub Office website that goes out to all the minority bidders. And then we advertised on our website, the county website. Other than that, we had some people who, because this had been brought forward several times, we had a few contractors who had shown interest in it and contacted someone at the county and said, hey, can you let me know when you bid it? So there were about 3 contractors that we sent emails out to let them know after these things were advertised. We let them know, hey, we've advertised it now.
So you're satisfied it got out to a broad audience?
Yes, and we had 15 plan holders. That doesn't mean they were all GCs. There were some subcontractors on that list, but there were several other GCs that just chose not to put their bids in. So I do feel like it hit a large audience. It hit our local audience, as far as I can see.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
And Mr. Chairman, I have a couple comments as
Sure.
well. The first one was I was hoping prior to or during this we were going to have the current elevations or what the elevations look like reflecting the impact of the tree removals with the building with the lighthouse in the back. And I don't think we're ready for that.
No, I talked to staff just before the meeting. The architect has not provided us with the rendering that you've seen online. Is just they've taken the building, put it there, and put the lighthouse behind it, just as a representation of. They just thought it would be neat on the rendering to see the lighthouse behind it. To be totally honest with you, what they didn't put in there were all of the trees that will still be on the site. You know, they didn't bother to put each tree in there. I did talk to staff about that. Especially Michelle, she's been out and looked at it. It's her opinion, as well as mine, that you're going to lose some of the taller trees that are around there, but you'll actually see more of the lighthouse from the elevation.
Taller than the building. The
Yeah.
existing trees are taller than the building,
Yeah.
right?
So I'm not going to give you an official opinion on the aesthetics of it. It's hard to give you that, but I do think it's going to preserve the natural area as well as give folks a better view of the lighthouse from the grounds. But we don't have a rendering here tonight. I hoped we would, but we don't.
And, just because we've talked about it, people have brought up put it in different locations. The mainland's pretty much out of the question, and Commissioner Beaumont and I talked about moving it further west on the parking lot, closer to the WRC building. But if we did that, it was going to be cost prohibitive. Is that?
To move the footprint would basically require a total redesign of the building. And Michelle could get into that. Also, as I was sitting here earlier tonight, the county attorney brought up the fact that we are contractually obligated to provide the bathrooms to the lighthouse. And so that's also, and I wasn't aware of this because I wasn't here for the history of the building, but I think that was part of the conversation about the location as well.
The 2001 settlement agreement between the county and Outer Banks Conservationists that requires the county to provide for the restroom facilities that lighthouse visitors may and will use, and actually an easement was conveyed to Outer Banks Conservationists for that purpose.
Well, I think they provided some funding.
In exchange, they do provide a certain amount of percentage of revenue from lighthouse tours.
And that will continue, I assume, going forward, as we'll still be providing that amenity for them.
Yes.
Okay, and then that's the other thing that people have raised a question about. We have a plan to put temporary restrooms in place. Do we not? We talked about it, and
I believe, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong. Our plan is to put the nicest portable restrooms you can put on a facility out there.
Okay.
One of the things we are doing is trying to schedule it as much as possible so it's 2 off seasons and 1 season, so that we're not impacting more than 1 tourist season, because we do understand that it will be an inconvenience in some ways, and so.
Sure.
But yeah, we do have plans to put temporary restrooms out there, and they will be better than just the
regular porta johns.
blue boonies.
Back in the blue porta johns.
No.
Okay.
And
Yes,
then another comment is something that I'm well aware of in talking to visitors to our area is that whatever the label of whatever the generation it is that's coming on vacation, the destination vacation has become increasingly why people go to places. And in keeping with that, that's part of the attractiveness of Currituck County. Along those lines, I know I've talked to Tamron, and we're trying to encourage people to avoid traffic, get here early, because that is per the survey, the number one complaint is getting stuck in traffic. And if the more things that we provide for entertainment or for education in the Whalehead Club, people can come to Whalehead Club and hang out for a couple hours a lot easier than the Food Lion parking lot. So this is another attraction for people to do. And then finally, referencing another one of the comments that I got at least, I'm not aware of a museum that actually makes money.
No.
Museums and parks do not exist to make money for the institutions or the governments that are there. They provide a service, they provide value, they provide a source of education. So I would challenge anyone to come up with a museum that actually makes money that people could actually afford to go to.
Well, I think the intent of government are to do the things that the private sector can't or won't do because there's no financial gain in it, and so that's why public, government provides museums and arboretums and parks and these things that don't make money.
But the indirect financial revenue that it will generate.
That's correct.
As a destination point will offset, I think, any cost.
One of the emails that we received too, the comment was there that this, didn't do anything to generate tourism. Tourism didn't exist if it weren't for the water and the boats. So, like I said, just touching on there, like from the crowd, anybody can send an email from an iPhone. People were here wanting it. So.
One last question. Talking about taking trees out, is it true that every tree we take out, there must be a tree planted to take its place?
There's an equation for heritage trees. So any live oaks, for instance, that we take out, it uses the caliper of the trunk, and then there's an equation that we use to tell us how many trees we have to plant. As an example of that, I don't know that we've done the calculation on this site yet, but for the do you know the number?
I don't know the number. I know I passed over it today, and I almost think there's like 20 live oaks we're going to plant because the ratio isn't 1-to-1 tree for tree, like Ben's explaining.
But we're not clear cutting.
No, sir. No, our intent is to make the park. The one thing that stands out to me, being new to the area about Currituck County, is the natural beauty of the place. And so the last thing that we want to do is to destroy that in an attempt to preserve that heritage. And so I think it's important to us. Yeah.
Okay. Any further comments? Mr. Payne?
Okay,
Chomping
now.
at the bit.
Well, I am. I want to see this thing start moving forward. It's
All right.
well needed. So I want to make a motion that that we approve the award to Sussex Development for the Historical Boat Museum per staff's recommendation.
And I will second that. And all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, it carries unanimously. Does anybody need a brief respite before we continue on? Yep. All right, we'll take a 5-minute sojourn. Thank you. I'll call the meeting back into order. And continue with new business. Item B, disaster debris removal and monitoring service, and the recommendation of an award. Oh, all right. Twice, all right.
Yes.
You've been passing the buck. You're all right. Yeah.
This item is about actually 2 contracts. As you'll notice, it says disaster debris removal and monitoring. The removal was one contract, and monitoring is a separate contract. So we went out for 2 pre-position contracts, RFPs, and we received sealed responses on June 20th. We received 2 responses for the monitoring and 3 responses for the removal services. This was an RFP where a team of county staff pulls together and evaluates the proposals and ranks the responders. And our highest ranking responder for the monitoring was Thompson Consulting Services. And our highest ranking responder for removal services was Southern Disaster Recovery. So I would like to recommend award of both of these contracts for disaster debris removal and monitoring services tonight.
So on the monitoring services, you said Thompson scored the highest?
That's correct.
And the price was the lowest, is that correct? Is that what
That's correct.
Okay.
SEPI was the lowest.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just so the board knows that these bids were actually conducted under FEMA regulations and policies. It's probably one of the most comprehensive bidding processes I've ever seen. I mean, you had to even staff had to do a cost analysis before the bids in order to determine whether the bids received were in the ballpark for what one might expect for these services. In addition, bidders were also required to include their profit margin that they would be making on each of the services they were bidding upon. So it was a very comprehensive, complex, and interesting process.
So it cost us a ton amount of staff time to.
Indeed it did.
to
Now,
go to this.
does this qualify for FEMA reimbursement?
Yes, sir, it does. We went through that process so that if we do have a declared disaster, we can be reimbursed.
Anything else from the board? Okay, thank you.
Can I ask one quick question? The storm debris removal, that's the same company that we used last time? They did a good job.
We do have them under contract as our last RFP we put out. That was about 2 years ago. We haven't had a storm where we activated that contract currently, so we haven't had an event with them at this time.
Okay, thanks.
All right, we'll look forward for a motion then.
One last question.
Sure.
Now, this covers any type of debris removal throughout a year, or is it just a certain time frame?
So this contract is pre-positioned. We have in the contract for it for 3 years, and we have an opportunity to extend that for another 2 years after that. So if any time during that period, whether it's a hurricane or even a snowstorm, if we have a debris event where we elect to activate the contract, we have the right to activate it or not activate it, and we issue a notice to proceed to the contractors.
Thank you.
This locks in their rates. I didn't say that, but this process locked in their rates clearly outside of an event to try to ensure we're getting the best prices that we can in a competitive way.
But just so that everybody understands, we are only reimbursed if it is a FEMA declared event. We can activate the contract for something that's not. It's our dollars that pay it instead of FEMA's.
All right. Okay. All right. Would anyone like to make a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we approve the contract to the staff's recommendation.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, carries unanimously. Item C, approval of Commissioner out-of-county travel. Commissioners Payment, Beaumont, and McCord will be traveling to Leadership Day in Washington, D.C. And Commissioner Payment, if you would just take a second and tell us what that's about.
Well, last year, myself and Commissioner Beaumont did attend this as well, the White House staffing gives us a briefing of a lot of issues that are going on, especially that concern at the county level. They believe in staying in touch with the county level elected officials, which are more in tune with the citizens out here. So it gives us an opportunity to ask questions. And Commissioner Beaumont last time was very advocate, stood up about the canal, and I'm expecting him to do that again this year with staffing up there to try to get around the boundaries at some of the counties. And one thing they did tell us is if any counties or anyone had any concerns or any obstacles that they could help with, to let them know. So we get good updates, make good contacts, and we do gives us an opportunity at our level to bring some issues to them and try to get some help at the federal level. And Mr. Commissioner Beaumont wants to add a little bit to that too, because I think he was very informative there.
I think some of the things that we took away from last year were the administration's initiatives throughout the country, and I'll use the opioid epidemic was one of the topics that we were briefed on, and I'm sure there'll be an update to that. But it is an opportunity to actually talk to folks that may be able to expedite the process, specific to Whalehead Club and our issues in Corova. President Trump has eliminated some of the roadblocks that have existed over the years to us getting those things fixed. So this could be yet another opportunity to try and get some movement on making our boat basin functional.
Good. Thank you. All right. Well, I will make a motion to approve your travel. For a second.
Second.
Thank you, sir. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries unanimously. Just so everyone knows, one of the items we removed, Commissioner Etheridge, the one to my left, and Commissioner Etheridge that is not here, and Commissioner Jarvis plan on attending travel. But part of what I said earlier about us having public know what we're doing, they need to be here to say what they're doing and why they're going, so that you're informed of how your tax dollars are being utilized by the board and the things we're doing to educate ourselves and move our county forward. So that is why that was removed this evening. Next item on the agenda is consent agenda. And is there any comments?
I'd like to say one thing on the consent agenda. It talks about the Ruerton Park, the Peach Festival, which is a good event in Knott's Island that's been going on for quite some time. I believe it's the 28th and 29th. I was going
somewhere in there.
27th and 28th of July, that weekend. So it's in the consent agenda. Just want to throw that out there. Great event.
Yeah, they said they had 35. They had planned to have 3,500 attendees this year. So that is a good event. All right. Well, vote before for a motion on the consent agenda.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, it carries unanimously. And I'll open the floor for a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you all very much for a great meeting. See you back in a couple weeks.